Good afternoon. During the declared emergency, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and in-person attendance limitations. So this will be a virtual hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Any registered participants will be participating by audio only. We also ask that you mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is now called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that apply to the property, permissions to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consents to sever properties, create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wishes to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email address because Committee of Adjustments and the TLAB, in the event of an appeal, will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee rendered here today, decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, TLAB, or in some limited circumstances, to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. The hearing procedure will be as follows. We will call each item in the order listed in the agenda, although we're still going to start off, I think, by dealing with one item, item 20, that is going to be deferred. Other than that, we go in order, and when an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with their presentation if desired. When the committee does not require a presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to address the committee. The committee may ask questions and/or then take the matter into the committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you're reaching the 5-minute mark. When addressing the committee, please clearly state your name and address, and please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will proceed first and make their presentation to the committee. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if being substantially revised in order to ensure that the revised application is both accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application have been informed of the changes. Then individuals, either in support or opposed to the application, typically opposed or with concerns, will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker at the end of their presentation, and when all speakers are finished, the applicant or agent will be given an opportunity to rebut only those issues and answer those questions that have been raised by the neighbors. That will then mark the end of the discussion, and the application will then be taken into the committee for a decision. Panel and staff, does anyone have any conflicts of interest, declarations of interest to declare on the matters before us on this afternoon's agenda? Okay, none to declare. In that case, why don't we start off with item number 20, which I believe is going to be deferred. That is 24 Totteridge Drive. We have a revision page with I thought that maybe due to the revisions they no longer needed the variance, but I understand you do. So the speaker is Marin Zabzuni. As well, we have a neighbor registered at 19 Ashwood who can just stay on the line because we'll want to get your opinion on the deferral as well. Mr. Zabzuni, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Maren Zabzuni at 1140 the Queensway. We requested a deferral because there's a missing variance from the initial zoning notice, which is the wall height, and we need this included on the public hearing notice. That's the reason for the deferral request.
Okay, yeah, you're missing a variance, so obviously you can't proceed. Let's just check in quickly with Mr. Hominick. Is Mr. Hominick on the line? Yeah, he would clearly not be against a deferral. It's not, we just can't proceed, but figured as a matter of courtesy, we just say hi and check in. Mr. Hominick? Anyway, he was present to speak on the merits of the application. As we're not proceeding, I don't believe we need to hear from him if we're having difficulties reaching him. So committee members, we have a request for deferral, missing variance, notwithstanding the elimination of one of the 4 variances that we had here to start with. So can someone make a motion to defer?
Danny Bellissimo moves for deferral.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. Seconder for that. Ms. Ruddick, thank you. All in favor? Okay, the matter is deferred. We'll see you here again, Mr. Zabzuni. Okay, so we can go back to the top of this afternoon's agenda with 2 DEERHURST Avenue. This is an application to construct a 1-story north side addition to the existing detached dwelling. And there are 4 variances. We have absolutely nothing on file other than the materials filed with the application. And the speaker for this application is
It's Filomena Vieira.
Filomena Vieira speaking for John Michael. Okay.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of my sons, John Michael and Sebastian. We're just interested in extending that garage to whatever limits we can, and the city allows us to, just strictly for storage, because my husband passed away 2 years ago. I moved back to the city, and I don't want to pay any storage fees.
Okay,
I prefer to keep everything at home.
We don't blame you.
So-
There certainly are lots of these self-storage places popping up, but in any event, there's no
Well, it's
comment
not
from
really-
neighbors. Yeah, there's no comment from neighbors, no
Oh.
comment from city departments, so everything seems in order. Would you like to tell anything to the committee members before I see if they have any questions for you, or they're ready to approve this?
I'm big on planting, so I wanted to get this done because I wanted to bring in few more trees for the backyard and put my gates up. I'm just wanting to better the area, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Panel members, any questions for Mrs. Vieira, or is someone ready to weigh in with a motion? And I don't see any conditions from urban forestry or anything. Mr. Kamarick?
I have a question for me. Just what the existing garage, do you know the setback of that? And like, are you in non-compliance already because of the existing garage? I'm assuming you're going straight back from what's there now.
No, apparently, so according to the survey, we're just, the east trough of the garage that existed was right on line of the property. So when I came to the city initially at the very beginning, the gentleman at the counter said that if I have to do some sort of extension, I should come in a foot. And
Yes.
we're good to do that. That part doesn't bother me at all.
I just don't see that on the drawing.
Well, they were supposed to revise that. So I can resend a revision, but they were supposed to, just on the additional part, come in about a foot. So that it would be a jag. The garage would be the existing garage, and then you'd come in like an L and continue the east trough.
Yeah, that's what I like. I'm hoping not to approve
No,
a situation that you can correct, and it's not shown on your drawings.
okay.
So it's a little bit of a difficulty in terms of we can't tie it to the drawings because it's not there.
Oh, I'm sorry. They were supposed to submit the correct ones. I'm not sure about that. Okay. I can get them to resubmit. I just don't. Okay.
Staff, Mr. Carvalino or Adam, can you assist? Do we not have what we need to have before us here? Mr. Bellissimo? Just to confirm that we're not missing anything here, because obviously Mrs. Vieira said she's acting at the last minute on behalf of her son, so.
I mean, at the end of the day, I understand the bylaw and I'm ready to go in the foot. That was no problem on our end. And I discussed that with the gentleman that drew up this drawing. So
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's nothing in the additional material packages under this item.
Sorry, and in addition, Mr. Chair, the only set of plans we have on file are the ones dated May 21st, 2021, which I believe are the ones that were included in your package.
yeah, I think there was a new submission just about 2 weeks ago.
And Mr. Chair, it appears that the addition is in line with the existing garage to the west side or to the west side lot line.
Yes. Notwithstanding, we've heard that the intention was to pull it in.
Yes, absolutely. There was a revision to the drawing. I know that. It was a few weeks ago because I had a discussion with Daniel to reduce the size
Okay.
so that we'd be in compliant.
Yeah,
But it's not here.
yeah, Mr. Carvalino.
Okay,
Mr. Carvalino, do we need to defer this matter and perhaps to put it on as soon as possible? I assume this is not built and you want to go ahead and build it, so we don't want an inordinate delay. But if we don't have what's before us, what you want approved, we're in a bit of a pickle. So when could we get this on the next available agenda?
Mr. Chair, first I wanted to confirm, is it the committee's desire to condition any decision on the site plan? And or did you want to try to address it by way of amending the text in the variance, much like we did with item 15 earlier today?
It's Mr. Kamarick. Let's hear if he thinks that's reasonable, and that's the way we could do it, by just revising. Even though I said in the speech we don't do revisions, we would give whatever. It's just not going to be tied to a plan unless this plan could be redlined. So, Mr. Kamarick?
We could do that. I have further questions as well, so I don't know how we would like me to proceed. I also have a question about the east elevation, if I may. You're proposing a garage door basically facing your backyard. Can you explain that?
It's just it's basically supposed to be a glass opening so that when we go into the garage, we're walking across the grass. Like there's no driveway into the garage. We can't fit a car there. So it's just for aesthetics. When you're looking in the backyard, you see not a whole brick wall.
Okay. No, I'm like, you're asking for a garage that's going to be over 1,000 square feet, which is the size of some small houses. And I'm just trying to.
Well, we already have 2 cars parked in the garage right now.
Okay.
And I don't have room for the furniture, and really it's just for access. Take out the lawnmower, whatever chairs and tables that I have that I want to set aside, because eventually I'll move out of the house. So
Okay, I'm not going to question that because you don't have any neighbors that are in opposition. The remaining concern then is that I personally don't want to approve a situation that shouldn't have been approved in the first place. And so we need to address how we deal with the jog if you're looking for an approval from me. I don't know how the other members feel about it. So perhaps we deal with it the way Mr. Carvalino was suggesting, is that we put the condition on that one variance, but then we'll need to know what the distance is of the existing garage.
Oh, through you, Mr. Chair, I didn't recommend that would be the only way of doing it. It's up to the committee, the way that they feel comfortable in addressing the decision. However, if the committee is not satisfied with the material before it, and according to the applicant, she's indicated that she does have plans, then we can bring this back with the new set of plans on the 14th of.
14th of when?
I assume
September?
you meant
September.
September, yeah.
Yes, sorry, September.
We lost you.
Danny Bellissimo will be more comfortable with that proposal because we should be looking at drawings when we look at variances. So
Okay,
the applicant seems to be satisfied. I would like to move for deferral.
thank you. Have a seconder for that? And perhaps before we do that, Mr. Comeric, perhaps your concern could be addressed at the original part, which was, could that be looked at as possibly addressing that as well in the redesign? Would you like that in the minutes? I think you mentioned that.
I'm okay. The original's there. We're not going to ask her to take it down.
Okay. I thought you were alluding.
The original garage, you mean?
It's okay. We're in committee, ma'am. I just thought,
Okay,
Stan, that you
okay.
meant that they should address that and perhaps that could be looked at. So I now clarify
Well,
that
that's
wasn't your
okay.
intent.
I'm not going to ask her to take down what she's got.
Okay, thank you.
No,
Okay,
well, it's been
So
there
we
for
have a
while.
motion. We shouldn't be hearing from the applicant here if you can be muted. Seconded for that motion. Mr. Kamark, thank you. All in favor, matter is adjourned to September the 14th. Thank you, Mrs. Vieira, and we'll see you back here on the 14th of September. Okay, next application is item number 1910 Albright Avenue. And this is an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. There are three variances. We have four letters of support, three from 8, 11, and 14. In the additional materials, we have an agent's cover letter, and that's all we have. The speaker is the agent Juan Martinez. Welcome, Mr. Martinez.
Hello, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Hello. Sir, I don't believe we need a fulsome presentation. Is there anything you'd like to advise the committee of before we see if they have any questions or if someone's prepared to make a motion? I do see we have an urban forestry condition number 3 here. Anything you'd like to tell the committee?
No further comments, Mr. Chair. Just we are aware of the urban forestry condition, yeah, and we accept if this application was to be approved.
Right, and no other comments, negative or otherwise, from city departments, area neighbors, and kudos to you for designing a new house and only having 3 what look like pretty minor variances. So congratulations.
Thank
you. Committee members, any
Thank you.
questions for Mr. Martinez? And if none, is someone ready to weigh in with motion?
Danny Bellissimo would like to make a motion, move approval of the three variances before us. I don't believe there are any conditions. Yeah, sorry, there's a condition by forestry. There is.
Thank you, Mr.
I think,
Bellissimo.
right?
Thank you.
Yes.
We're seconder for that motion. Ms. Ruddick, thank you. All in favor? You have unanimous approval. Okay, thank you. Okay, 20 has been deferred, so we move on to item number 21, which is 66 Braywin Drive. It's an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. There is one variance, FSI increase from 0.45 to 0.51. We have a previous decision, an arborist report. Planning indicates in the email they have no concerns. And we have 4 letters of opposition. And registered to speak on this application is, also in addition, in the additional materials, we have more opposition. Petition from neighbors on Golfwood Heights, and as well a communication from Councillor Grimes to refuse the application. Speaker, the agent is Shema Balki. And as well, we have registered to speak 2 neighbors from Braywin, 68 and 83 and 67, 3, and 1 from Golfwood Heights, number 25. So welcome, everyone. We'll start off by hearing from the agent, Mr. Balki.
I'm muted.
No, we can hear
Hello,
you.
can you hear me?
Yes.
May
Welcome.
please stop unmuting yourself. I've just unmuted you.
Sorry.
There you go. No
Can you hear me now?
Yes. So yes, ma'am. So we have a new detached dwelling proposed with an attached garage with 1 variance
That's
of floor
correct.
space index, and we have overwhelming opposition to this application by area neighbors. So if you could please give us a presentation, please.
Sure.
Sorry, we also have
I'm
urban
the
forestry 1 and 2 on this application, just to finish.
That's correct. So my name is Shema Balki. I'm the applicant as well as the agent on this application for 66 Braywiin Drive. I am requesting for a minor variance increase for the floor space FSI only of 6%. I understand there's a lot of opposition because I believe because it is ties to my previous first application where with all due respect, my whole application was completely wrong. It was a disaster. I had fixed all that. My variances were all compliant. Zoning has no issue with except this one variance that I'm looking for. The opposition letter states that I might be looking for multi-level. I am not looking for multi-level home. This is my dream home. This is a home for my children that I'm going to raise with. And this is a home because of the changes and all the changes that are happening, that I'm working from home. My kids will be doing schooling from home. I need the space for this. This is my dream home. It has nothing to do. It's not a roaming home. I think it was perceived wrong initially, and that's why all that. And to address the letter from the petition for the Gulfwood, that's a petition from the previous application. It is not a petition from this application that was reattached to this application. There are several homes on my street that are new built that are above the 51% FSI that I'm aware of. So I'm respectfully
Yeah, sorry, ma'am. Can I ask you?
requesting.
Can I just ask you to interrupt? Just stop for a second. Time will
Sure.
continue, obviously. So, are you
No
telling me
worries.
that there was a previous? Usually, when there was a previous application on a house,
It was refused.
ma'am.
It was
ma'am, I'm
refused.
just saying. Usually, we get a
Yes.
copy of that in our materials. So I'm just.
I believe it is there.
Oh, it is there. Oh,
It's there, Mike. It's there.
okay. I must have missed it then. Okay, it is there. My
Apologies.
apologies.
It is there. No, no
Okay.
worries.
Okay, please continue.
Sorry, I'm a bit nervous.
No.
It's the first time me sitting in front of a panel. I
Yeah,
apologize.
okay. Anyway,
If I'm
at
going
least you're
too
not in
fast, please
person.
stop me.
Yeah, just calm down and let us know what's going on here because
Okay.
is
So
only one
all I'm
variance.
asking,
Right.
it's only one variance, and that is all I'm asking to rebuild this house. This house is very, very old. It's falling apart. All I'm doing is to make a requirement for my kids and to build a house that they can live in and work in school from. Everything else, I am going to be looking to permanently working from home. So I need the space. I know there was a concern with there's a certain concern that I can address if there's with the neighborhood, and I can make changes to the plan if I need to satisfy the city to get this approval, please.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
First of all, I want to clarify with staff that which of these materials referred to, if any, the old plan. The applicant has said that the materials and our additional materials that we just received after the fact, which was the petition from the Gulfwood Heights, that related to the old application as well. Can we?
It did.
I'm asking staff to confirm that, ma'am. I know you said that, but I
Sorry.
need staff to do that. The same thing with Councillor Grimes' refusal. Can we just make sure that everything that we're considering here is with respect to this particular application before we continue on?
Mr. Chair, on the screen right now is what we have in the package for the previous decision, which is dated February 9th, 2021. If I scroll down, you can see it was not approved.
Okay, so what's the date of that petition from Gulfwood?
If you could scroll down, you'll see it. It's the additional attachment.
I can't. Does that say? It's too small.
No, at the bottom.
Ma'am, we're asking staff to do. I just want to
Sorry.
clarify what applies to this application and what applied to the previous application.
No worries.
Should not be considering the letters. Is there a date at the top of that? Here, January. There we go. Those are all referred to the old application. It's hard to see, but I think it says January at the top, correct? Yes, so that refers to the February application. Okay, ma'am, if you want to continue, I'm going to just have staff. Oh, let's see the counselor's note too.
Mr. Chair, the councilor's letter is for item 22.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that. Okay. So, and again, we don't have planning. Planning has advised they have no concerns with this application, but we have, again, the overwhelming support, opposition, or all that referred to the old application. So am I correct that we only have 4 letters of opposition? The ones listed in our, on the bookmark? Right, that one's dated August 5th, that's fine. Yeah, August 5th, okay, they're all August 5th. Okay, so those are before us. The 4 letters, but not the one petition from Gulfwood Heights that was given to us previously in the additional materials. Okay, so ma'am, sorry about that. I just wanted to make clear, so you're very correct. We only have the 4 letters of opposition here. And you said, can you please continue, because I know you got sidetracked by that. You were about to say that there is certainly precedent at 0.51 for new builds, and again, you have no other variances.
No other variances. This
Yes.
is it. Yes.
Okay.
There are other properties with the same lot size that have over the 51% FSIs approved in this our same road, same street.
Okay. Okay, so again, let's hear now from does anyone have any questions for the applicant, or we'll hear from the neighbors? We still do have 4 neighbors with objections. I assume they know that the application's been changed, and we'll hear from them what their concerns are. So at this point, no questions for the applicant.
I have a question.
Yes, please
Sure.
go ahead.
I believe the previous application was for a duplex, is that correct?
It was not a duplex. It was referenced incorrectly. My architect made an error. That's why I stated earlier that my first application was a complete disaster. It was a loss of money for me because everything was just done incorrectly. And I'm new to this and I did not understand how it works.
I understand. I was on that previous panel and I was part of that decision. So I
Yes.
just wanted to clarify
Yes.
that we refused it because it was noted as a duplex.
It wasn't, but it was not supposed to be. It wasn't meant to be, but it was
Correct, but
referenced. Yes, correct.
That's what was before us.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Any other questions, or we'll move on to the neighbors? So first neighbor is a neighbor at 83 Braywin Avenue. So I just want to look at my location map to see how far that is away. In the meantime, let's hear from Jennifer DiFrancesco.
Hi, good day. Yes, my name's Jennifer DiFrancesco. Basically, I'm not directly, we live in a cul-de-sac, so basically the area in which we all live. My house isn't directly affected, or it's not right beside the house that it's going to be in. And as we just listened to the Shema Balki, who spoke to, I think that was the biggest issue that we had. Our major concern was that it was going to be a duplex or a triplex. Even now, as we look at the plans, the new plans, I mean, there are a couple of things that we were concerned about. It may be a new thing that people are doing in new homes, but there are 6.5 baths in this house, which brings up the concern of, will this eventually be turned into a duplex? It also states on the new plan it's a new build, so I am myself a little confused about that. I don't know if they're just they're adding a second floor or a new build, or tearing this down and it's a completely new build. We want to make sure that this stays a single family home. We want to make sure that our community, we have a very, very tight-knit community. We have, it's a small cul-de-sac. We have there's 11 or 12 kids that play in this street. And we are, again, very tight-knit. So we're concerned that it does stay a single family home. We decided to buy here and live here, grow our families, retire here long-term. Also, too, another thing that might be, I don't know if it's been taken into consideration, is the environmental impact. 70 Braywin, which is behind 66, it's just the way that the location, the way it's set up in the cul-de-sac, they deal with a lot of flooding. So I don't know if that's an issue that anyone has considered as well. I guess the city would look into something like that. But I mean, these are just a few of the concerns that I have. Like I said, I don't mind them building as long as it stays a single family home. I mean, they're already renting out the basement. So, I mean, that's something that they already do, but I just want to make sure, again, it stays a single family home just because of the area that we live in. And yeah, those are most of my concerns. I know that my neighbors, ones that are directly impacted, have bigger concerns, obviously. And they'll be speaking to that today, but those are my concerns that it stays single family.
Yeah, we do have a 68 right next door to speak. Thank you, Ms. DiFrancesco. And I want to say I just pulled up the location map, so I see you're in that nice pie-shaped lot. So you certainly, I can see that neighbors. I first saw the address and I figured, oh, you're way down the street, but I see you were in a cul-de-sac, so you were certainly affected by that. And I would, as we hear from the other neighbors, obviously I can see I wasn't present at the last hearing, but having something presented as a duplex and now coming back. No wonder the community is suspicious, and I hope your fears will be allayed here today, because I would be in the same situation. They come with a duplex, and then suddenly it's so. I was, when I reviewed the material, I see it's only one variance, and that's really hard to achieve. Not many people come here with just one variance on a new build. They try to get more. So hopefully, as we hear from the other neighbors, we're going to allay everyone's fears. Ms. Balke is going to allay the fears that. But I understand the reason for the suspicion. Okay, any questions for Ms. DiFrancesco before we move on? Okay, Sandy Mihacek at 67, so you're very close.
Yeah, I'm just right across. It's Mihalcic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just right across. I actually do have a letter of opposition that was attached to the PDF. I sent it in separately, but they did put it together. But it is dated August 5th, my letter of opposition. So just so you know, it may not be listed with the other 4, but it is down the list. So there should be probably 5 opposition letters there. I attached the petition only because it was the same variance that we were arguing or objecting in February.
I'm glad you're here, because I don't see your letter here. Does anyone else see it? I see the other ones I referred to.
It's the one that probably number 21 or opposition petition. So it's the top piece there, August 5th. Oh, there we go.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe you can keep that up on the screen. Okay, go ahead, ma'am. Yep.
Okay, no problem. Again, echoing what Jennifer was mentioning, I have no issues of building as long as it stays within the zoning bylaw. But, just to be transparent and just to have on the record, the proposal of the application was to construct a new detached dwelling. And what raised a red flag with me is I would like it to say a new single detached dwelling, because in the past it did mention they had previous application attempts. One was a triplex and one was a duplex. So I know Shaima was mentioning that she didn't know that it was a duplex, but when I see 2 apartments in the floor plans, I don't see how this could have been an oversight. Regardless, this just raised the flag. So just to have on the record, I just want to make sure it's stated as a new single detached dwelling. Mm-hmm. So just because of the previous attempts, as well, the plans do provide easy modifications to potentially become a multi-residential. And by having a secondary side door to the basement, an office space that shows with a 4-piece bath and a walk-in closet as an office space, and as well as a door separating the first floor to a second floor bedrooms, where the second floor bedrooms have a family room as well, and 6.5 bathrooms. But I don't know, the plans just has that variation that could easily make this a multi-residential unit. And as well, the excavated footprint or proposed coverage is not much different than what was proposed in February. It's only the minor the minor like floor space index is, it was, I think, 0.52. This application shows 0.51. Like, that's not much of a difference. The only difference is they removed the the breakfast nook. So in my opinion, like, the variance is not minor. The scale of the project is still extensive. As what, you know, just with the existing residential dwellings with respect to size. But, you know, for like neighboring constructions, either that were in progress or finished, as far as I know, they didn't tender any variance issues and they measured up with the official plan. So, but I can't speak on, you know, on that part. But so in light of all this, you know, just, I don't want a precedence to be set for other properties to push the variance outside the zoning laws. And as well, I just want to make sure that this remains a single detached dwelling, and that, you know, because from the floor plans, modifications could easily be made to this to make this a multi-residential, as they are already renting out the basement. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think in the city, I think staff can confirm this, that, you know, doing having one basement apartment is you're entitled to as of right. In terms of making
Right.
changes, I hear what you're saying. The answer would be that in order to do it legally, they would certainly have to come back to this committee, if not elsewhere, in order to try to make it a duplex or a triplex. I hear what you have to say. So there'd be, in order to do it legally, they'd have to come back to the city. Is that correct, Mr.
Okay.
Carvalino? It is a single family zoning and single family home here.
Mr. Chair, the basement unit, well, second suites are permitted.
Yes.
However, the definition has some caveats to it for it to be permitted as of right. In terms of this application, the notice did go out to construct a new detached dwelling, and that's what's being proposed. There's no indication of something being proposed otherwise.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if no one has any other questions for this speaker, we'll move on to the next one. Mario Mastrangelo at 25 Gulfwood Heights.
Members. I was looking at these floor plans, and like Sandy was saying, it looks a little suspicious. But my big problem is on the west side with the neighbor building a big wall. And I'm wondering if she's done a shadow study and what the overhang is going to be to the next property.
Sir, did we lose you? Or are you
On
still
the
there?
side that the garage are being built.
Sir, you want to repeat that, sir? I think we lost you for a second or two.
I wonder if she's done
Shadow
a
study.
shadow study, because blocking that big wall next door will set precedent, and I don't want anyone else to do it next door to me.
Okay, and you said something after that? After the shadow study?
And the
something
other
about
thing is the roof line setback.
Okay, did you say something about the garage, sir?
Yeah, on the side of that garage there.
Okay. Okay, continue. She'll address this when she hears.
And I'm all in favor what everyone else has said, is concerned about being a rooming house or about multi-level apartments.
Anything else, sir?
If it's going to be a single family home, I don't have a problem.
Okay. You're on the record as stating that.
Perfect.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Mastrangelo? Okay, in that case, let's move on to the last speaker, Jerry Prock of 68 Braywin, which I guess is right next door. Yeah, right next door.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Chairman. I will be speaking on behalf of myself and my wife, and I live at 68 Braywin Drive. We oppose the owners at 66 Braywin Drive with the requested variance to the city's bylaw. They are requesting a floor space of 449.3 square meters over and above the 395.73 square meters, which is the maximum floor space permitted. this is still a significant increase in the size of the house. The measurements failed to meet the existing space index of 0.45. Yes, this would be out of scale with the other homes in the neighborhood where we have lived happily for the last 44 years. To date. This is also, this house is also far too large for a single family home. The floor plans indicate a multi-house unit sporting 6.5 washrooms. How many houses have that many washrooms for a single family? It just stresses the level of credibility and increases the level of suspicion as well. This includes an office plan showing a walk-in closet and a full washroom. Again, in an office, we are concerned about the loss of daylight that will result from the proposed structure. Now, it was mentioned that there'd be no plans for a duplex, yet the plans showed 4 bedrooms in the previous drawing. So they may reappear once the house is approved. We don't know that. The owners at 66 Brewin Drive are again just not adhering to and are not respecting to build to the city's bylaw. The requested proposed dwelling is simply the wrong size for the lot dimensions. And I'd also like to add, how many more times do we have to go through this approval process before the city's bylaw is respected? So that's basically what I have to say. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Proc, and just think at least you didn't have to drive down here 3 times. It's being done. So, small victories. Okay, I hear what you have to say. So you feel it's out of character. I think she was saying, the applicant, that 0.51 is quite appropriate and has been, there's examples of others, and she has no other variances, no height, no side yards, whatever. But your position was that the 0.51 was at a scale, and as well as your suspicions along with everybody else. Thank you for that. Any questions from Mr. Proc, or we'll go back to the applicant, Ms. Balke, for her rebuttal and to answer the questions that were asked. Okay, Ms. Balke.
Hi, I would like to address the few concerns from my neighborhood. I truly appreciate their feedback and I understand where they're coming from. Just to bring to your point, if that was me, I lived in this neighborhood and then somebody wanted to build a duplex next to me, I would be just as concerned, just as upset as they are. And I completely understand that, where they're coming from. As I mentioned before, that my first application was way out of proportion, way wrong. It was the first time I did this and I could not understand half of the things on that application to begin with. I learned, I studied, and I went through these stuff. Even though right now me presenting and my architect could not come in today and I'm presenting, I still don't know half of the stuff, but I'm trying my best to present this here. So I want to reassure my neighborhood that this is not a multi-level, this is not a roaming home, this is my home, and you will be seeing me here living for the next 10 to 15 years. Until my children grow up and leave this home. So no, it is not. It is my home. It is the home that I've been dreaming to have. So yes, for the washrooms, I have very, very different children, and my children are different in nature. And then I have to make sure that they have their own specific washroom for their own needs. Now that we are having virtual learning from home, virtual studying, and all that comes into play, I need them to have their place or their space to do that properly and comfortably. Another thing is for the office that you have mentioned, yes, that was considered an office or a room that is for my mother. She has mobility issues. She's 81 years old that lives on her own, that I'm trying to bring her over, that she can live with me on a main level where everything is available to her. That was the only thing that I prefer that room to be built for her. And then later, maybe later in my life, I would use it as an office for me because I'm going to be going into permanent work from home. That's what my company is looking into. So those are the other. No, I have not done a shadowing thing, but from what I understand, that the west side, which is Jerry, the west side they are backing to me. They're facing west. Their back is to my side. So I'm not sure how the shadowing will affect them. And there is very minimal effect in that. I have a very tree lot, so there's no issue with privacy. I'm already covered with trees, and none of them are going to be coming down or anything. So, and that's all I have to say, but I can guarantee you that this is not a multi-home. This is not a roaming home. This is not any rental property. This is my home. And I would really appreciate if I can get approval to build so I can give my kids a better living space.
Ma'am, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Your last application, was it the same architect who designed it for you?
Yes, he was the same architect. I had asked him to fix things.
And back in February 9th, 2021, when you were here at committee, well, virtually, did you present the application or did your architect?
No, he did. He did.
And you are presenting the application today?
Yes, correct. Because he could not make it.
He could not make it. Okay, thank you very much. Committee members,
No
any
problem.
questions?
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
I believe the applicant stated the opinion that there are other properties in the immediate vicinity that exceed the coverage that is being proposed here. I just wonder if the applicant has examples or knows.
Sorry, go ahead. 22,
Okay,
number
for those
22, number 36. Same about a lot size. 54 by 120, 52, 53 approximate by 130 are over the 51%. They're same lot size as mine. Mine is 55 by 180. So I have a very deep lot.
Okay. So number 22, Braywin, and what's the other one that you're stating?
36, 48. Those are the three main, I believe they are the highest in the FSI.
Okay. Don't have time to confirm that, but I'll accept that.
Thank you.
Also, planning is not piping in, and it is just one variance. Before I do say anything else, I'll leave it to other members if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kamark. Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant or any of the neighbors? If not, is someone ready to make a motion? Mr. Kamark?
I can do a motion. I understand the concerns with regards to this potentially being a duplex, and totally sympathize with that. As I say, I wasn't present at the previous hearing, and I know that's why we refused it at that time. We can only go by what we have in front of us, and what we have in front of us, actually, the existing house as it stands now has variances, which are being eliminated by the new proposal. And I believe by cutting it down to just the one variance, the applicant is making a significant attempt at doing something that meets the 4 test. And therefore, I would like to propose approval with some conditions.
I think is there an urban forestry on this, Stan? I think 1 and 2.
Urban forestry condition 1 and 2. And I believe that's it.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
I'll
in
second.
favor? Before we vote, all in favor? Okay. Okay, I am opposed, and I will explain why. I'm opposed because I believe that, in my respectful opinion, that this is a disingenuous application, that the applicant is not coming here with clean hands. I am not smart, but I'm logical, and if it looks like a duck, smells like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And the applicant, I believe, one of the reasons, this is my line of questioning, that the architect is not here is for very good reason why he is not here. So I will dissent. The application carries 4-0. Good luck to the applicant. I hope this remains a single-family home. I truly do. And good luck to the neighbors. Thank you. Okay, our next application is item number 22, 837th Street. And this is an application to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. We do have a revised notice sheet showing a change, one of the variances from 0.59 FSI to 0.56, whereas 0.35 is permitted. All the other variances, there are a total of 5, remain the same. We have 5 variances. We have applicant submission and revised plans, lots of revised plans, the Long Branch guidelines, a submission from the application, presentation materials. Planning has weighed in on this, and we have 7 letters of support. And in the revised materials we just received this morning, some additional materials, we also received the applicant's reply to the letters of opposition. There are a lot of letters of opposition in the revised package this morning. We had 15. There were 7 in the original package, and several others that I won't go through the numbers. Planning is of the opinion that this application should be refused. And speaking on this application is the agent Brittany Wong, as well as we have neighbors registered to speak from 34 36th Street, 10 38th Street, and 11 Atherton Crescent. That would be the president of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association, Ms. Mercado. Okay, so let's get started. Brittany Wong.
Good afternoon, Chair. How are you today?
I'm good.
That's great.
Okay, so we do have quite a bit of opposition to this application, including community planning.
Is it okay if I go ahead with my presentation?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Brittany Wong with Atherton, the team presenting today on behalf of the owners. We appreciate you taking the time to hear our presentation regarding the minor variance and proposed development at 837th Street. Next slide, please. At Atherton, our team is committed to thoughtful placemaking that integrates existing site context to enhance communities for all its members. We have been recognized at many different levels for our unique approach to residential construction. Next slide. Our diverse team includes a variety of professionals with decades of industry experience. Next slide, please. I'd like to introduce our clients, Brian and Claire Hartog, who have been members of the Long Branch community since 2016. They were drawn to the area because of the proximity to the lake, access to the GO train, and excellent education options for their young children. They are a growing family of 4 now at the limits of the existing space and prefer to stay in the community. However, the current home is not viable to renovate due to a number of concerns related to functionality of this current floor plan, the foundation structural integrity, and ongoing issues with leakages and flooding. Next slide. We will start with the main wall height. Next slide again. The top image shows the proposed elevation at number 8 and how it interacts with the existing streetscape beside and across 37th Street. The design of the massing respects and reinforces the existing physical character in the neighborhood as well as the existing street pattern. Specifically, it includes the open gable roof lines, articulation in the massing, prominent brick cladding, black feature elements, strategically placed window groupings, and a prominent at-grade related entrance. Next slide.
Try to slow down a little bit, Ms. Wong.
Oh, sorry about that.
Thank you. It's okay.
And the proposed architecture and color palette were inspired by both the current home's facade, the immediate streetscape, and the Long Branch guidelines. The massing takes cues from the existing home to ensure that the historical character is upheld and integrated into the new elevation. So if you go to the next slide. The rear elevation follows consistent detailing with the front elevation. The primary roof consists of open gable roof trusses to align with the historical character of the facade. This adds to the wall height and therefore the requested variance. Next slide. Our next variance is in relation to the rear port platform. Next slide again. The upper floor platform was designed for occasional use of 2 occupants. As shown on the image, the closest home to the balcony is approximately 20 meters away. The mature trees and dense existing plant material create a buffer for privacy. Next slide. Next, we will discuss Fsi and building lengths. The proposed structure is within all building depth and setback requirements. The length is only on the north side of the main floor, is only on the north side of the main floor, and is a minor increase of 0.98. The increased Fsi and north main floor length are due to a number of factors. 1, the growing family requires additional bedrooms above what is in the existing space. 2, the client now primarily works from home. The permitted Fsi was developed prior to our global climate change and did not account for area to accommodate the now required at-home office spaces and the occupancy load. Next slide. A shadow study of the proposed home in July indicates that the home only has a marginal shadow between 8 to 10 a.m. on number 12. The existing trees in place would provide a longer shadow in comparison. Since the residents are planning to keep the mature trees and dense landscaping in place, there will be very little noticeable impact on the adjacent properties as the tree will overshadow the home. Next slide. An analysis completed in January yields the same result. Next slide. The new massing and window locations were designed in a way to ensure privacy for all residents. The windows facing number 12 were offset from any openings into the adjacent home. The impact of the building length and FSI do not negatively impact enjoyment of number 12. Next slide. The side south elevation of the home backs into the rear yards of 330 to 334 Lake Promenade. The sight lines have no impact. The directly affected neighbors were provided with summary packages of the proposed structure. We received 7 letters in support of the build and provided a cover letter, the checklist, and a late response to the opposition letters. Next slide. In summary, the proposed variances, when reviewed against the existing immediate and larger context of the large Long Branch community, are minor, compatible with the existing massing, meet the general intent of the zoning bylaw as well as the official plan. This concludes the presentation. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. And I just want to clarify, when I was doing the introduction, I think
Yep.
I said 7 letters of opposition. In fact, those are letters of support. And in the additional materials, we did have opposition from 38, 39th Street and a few other neighbors. That I marked
Yes,
down, and then there were 15 letters of opposition. But you do have 7 letters of support, which I didn't mention. So my apologies.
yes. I think it's actually 14 letters of opposition as opposed to 15. I think there was a double upload.
Okay.
On the AIC.
I didn't counter check to see if any of the specific letters and the matched the petitions and all of that, but thank you for pointing that out. Okay. So does anyone have any questions for the agent before we hear from the neighbors? Okay, so
Danny Bellissimo has a question. Is the applicant aware of the August 8th letter from the councillor asking that you defer and refine the plans? You've seen that letter from the councillor?
Yes, I have seen that letter.
Just want to make sure you were aware of it. Thank you.
Yep.
No other questions? Let's hear from Sandy Donald at 3436th Street.
Okay, am I being heard?
Yes.
Hello? Okay,
Yes.
good. My name is Sandy Donald, or Alexander Donald. I'm from 3436th Street, which is just one over. My big concern is if this is approved, the precedent will set. Basically, when exceptions become a precedent and then the precedent is used to justify more exceptions precedents, the exception or precedents becomes the majority. Committee of Adjustment has to consider all the decisions of how they will be used for future FSIs, main wall platforms, and trees. And going from precedents for 938th Street, TLAB decision expressed the intent of the official plan. The neighborhood policy of the city official plan, especially chapters 2, 3, and 4, present no such support for intensification. Neighborhoods are areas of intensification. Rather, the policy, while not precluding redevelopment, encourages stability changes that is gradual, that fits and respects and reinforces the existing planned built form. Applies to this application. 3036 OMB decision, which deals with the FSI, the 0.35 standard is intended to reinforce the historical pattern of relatively small homes on relatively large lots. It is unusually low in the neighborhood because only a low FSI would effectively implement official plan policy that seeks to preserve the neighborhood character. If the council that drafted the original FSI bylaws had wanted to see lots with FSIs of 0.5 or or 2.75, they would have made these standard. Each successive council that have reviewed these bylaws have reaffirmed them, applies to this application. Decision for 823rd Street, the same conclusion about whether the FSI variances are minor as did in the 3036 Street appeal. On 7036 Street, the official plan states that urban forest should not be compromised by development pressure. If a principle is not to be compromised, I have to give it ample weight. Protecting Toronto's natural environment and urban forest should not be compromised by growth insensitivity to the needs of the environment or neglected. 90 Mono Drive addresses why they cannot meet the bylaw. There should be a valid reason why the bylaw requirement cannot be met. What is lacking in this proposal is a recognition of the fact that the bylaw imposes constraints, and these constraints to apply to all. The variances neither meet, the variants meet neither the test of being minor or being within the intent of the zoning bylaws. As far as decisions that have been handed down by TLAB, no decision for TLAB has approved a FSI of 0.5 or higher. So this would be completely contrary to all the TLAB's decisions. This one they're asking for 0.59. This is a generic application in that it could be applied to any 50-foot lot on the block, street, or within Long Branch. If approved, this precedent could be used to support any oversized house, monster house, on any variance application in South Long Branch. The OPA concept of prevailing is crucial for preserving the character of neighborhoods and cannot be undermined. This application does not meet the general purpose and intent of the official plan, neighborhoods 4.1.5, nor the general purpose and intent of the bylaws. It is not minor, but major in both size and impact. It fails 3 of the 4 tests and must be rejected. Needless to say, I've been through a number of hearings for 36th Street. If this one was approved, we will probably have to go through more hearings for 36th Street because this one would be used as a precedent to justify a 0.59 or higher.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Donald. Were you wrapping up? Because you're out of time, but.
That's basically, also I would mention too, the decision for 90 Ash Street has just come down from TLAB. It was a 0.61 FSI and it was a turn down.
It was also turned down at committee?
It was turned down at TLAB.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Donald before we move on to the next speaker? Okay, so next on we have is, unless she wants to go last, is Christine Mercado from the LBNA. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would actually prefer to go last because then I wouldn't end up repeating what Mr. Jameson wants to say.
You can be the cleanup hitter, number 4.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so Ron Jameson of 1038th Street.
Ron, you're unmuted. Ron Jamieson, can you hear me?
1038th Street. So yeah, he's, I guess, speaking generally because he's on the street behind, but on the other side of the street. So it's not like his backyard is backing onto the property. He's at number 10. Ms. Mercado, is Ron Jameson on your executive, or is he speaking on his own behalf?
He's speaking on his own behalf.
Okay.
He's no longer, he's a member in good standing, but he's no longer on the
Okay,
executive.
I was just wondering because I see he's not directly affected.
Correct.
In terms of being, he's across the street, on the street behind. Okay, we'll see if we can reach him.
Ron, you're unmuted. Can you hear us? He was there for sound check, so I don't know what's.
Okay, Ms. Mercado, why don't we hear from you?
Okay, hello?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so if you could pull up my my letter of objection, please. Thank you so much. So my name is Christy Mercado, and I am the chair of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association. So we are actually here to support planning's position of refusal for an FSI length and main wall height variance. Really, preemptive, really what it comes down to is that on 37th Street, it's actually a very stable street and also a very characteristic street of Long Branch, where the lot fabric is actually very consistent, as well as the FSIs. And what the applicant is asking for is that there is no house that's that long, and there is no FSI that is that big. So the extended length, it has massing that towers over and overwhelms. And as Mr. Donald said, we are very active in TLAB appeals, so we're very aware of what gets used for evidence at TLAB hearings. And this would be a negative impact to the neighborhood, as it would set a precedent for future FSIs that are that large. So when it comes to, if you can go down to page 2. One more, please. One more to the mapping. Thank you. So we did our FSI analysis, and as you can see, as displayed by the light green, this is north of James. This is the broader neighborhood. The FSI of 0.35 or lower is well represented in the neighborhood. If you can go to the next page, please. This is in the immediate neighborhood of 837th Street. And I actually went to the effort of making sure and double checking our data because there was a question about the source data, and this supports what planning is saying, is that the prevailing FSI is 0.35, as well as the lot fabric is 50-foot lots in the neighborhood. So this is a very typical lot. So so maintaining a more consistent FSI should not be a hardship for the applicant. And it also, this doesn't contradict what planning's position is. We've also included the exception of 0.43 at 1437th, which this panel approved recently. A city tree was preemptively removed, and the property was then for sale shortly thereafter. So like this application, a tree was ended up being preemptively removed, which is another part of the green infrastructure that the LBNA is trying to protect. When it comes to the letters of objection, there were 13 personal letters of objection of people that do participate in the LBNA, and they do understand the policies of the OP, the bylaws, and they do participate in TLAB hearings. So they do have intricate, and they are a familiar group of people. They're also are directly affected because we do have letters from 2 doors up. We also have letters from across the street, as well as adjacent streets that are dealing with severances as well as overbuilds from 39th, 38th, and 36th Street. They also support planning's recommendation for refusal, whereas the applicant just simply has a petition, which, you know what, and there is no clarification that that the residents actually understood what they were supporting. So while developing the site is supported, this house needs to be smaller, and so it does not overwhelm, overshadow, and dominate the street. And I would like to, if you can go to the next page, please. And sorry, further down. Okay, this is the decision of 1437th Street, which was a very recent approval, which is 2 doors up. And it's a similar size lot, and it's a 0.43 FSI that was actually recently approved by this panel. And also, I'd like to point out 1538, which was a 0.53, which was 325 meters squared, and a wall height of 7.41 meters that was refused April 29th by this panel. And that was 1538, and that would be the next street over. So there is a pattern of trying to keep that FSI down at a more reasonable height, a reasonable size. That's comparable to the neighbors on this street. So in conclusion, I would ask that we would have supported a deferral to make a house that was smaller. But in the event that the applicant is still insisting on a large FSI, despite recommendations from planning, we would ask that this application be refused.
Thank you, Ms. Mercado. Were you able to find Mr. Jameson? Let's try one more time, otherwise we'll move back to
Ron Jameson, can you hear me? You're unmuted, Ron.
Okay, in any event, Ms. Mercado did a very good job. Did anyone have any questions for Ms. Mercado? I don't only see three of you up there. Okay, no one has any questions, so let's go back to the agent, Ms. Wong, to rebut what we've heard from the neighbors and answer any questions.
I hope that it's okay. I'm not sure if I'll make the 5-minute mark, so if you just bear with me, that's okay, just because there's a lot to talk about.
Okay, go ahead.
So first things first, we don't believe that this application is generic just because of the way that we are situated. If you look at slide number, okay, just scroll down a little bit, sorry. Keep scrolling. I think it's slide number 15, where there's that one. So the proposed home footprint, that one. Ooh, right there. So if you zoom in, thank you. So to the north is unit number 12. Her garage is sitting on the property line. And then to the south is actually 330 Lake Promenade. That's a corner lot. I'm not sure if you're very familiar with the neighborhood, but I also submitted a response to the opposition letters that shows where the site is in relation to the two properties. And so that's why we believe that our application is very special. We're not a generic interior lot. And with that being said, the massing and the FSI is a little bit different, but I'd like to clarify that we actually removed the tree that everyone has been complaining about since April 27th. We apologize for the confusion because the letter states that the tree is removed and not to be removed on the site plan. It was not a mature tree sitting at 23 meters in diameter, and it was done with the consent by the owner of 1237th Street. And the tree is actually on her property. So we have discussed that with her and there were no complaints at all. Moving on to the building length. The building length should be specified that it's actually only on the north portion of the ground floor. So if you look at the site plans, on the second floor, on the south side of the house, all the other portions of the building are within the building length. This still maintains the cottage-like character of the lot, and it doesn't impede on anyone, and it doesn't cause any other setbacks and building depth zoning standards. It doesn't create a loss of privacy or situations of overlook or shadow itself because it's only on the ground floor. So moving on to FSI. One, it does not trigger shadow impacts as well or loss of privacy or situations of overlook because we are at the permitted distance at the second story. The FSI doesn't negatively impact the community when the massing is designed correctly, especially when it cannot be perceived from the street. So that comes back to how I think that, this is not a generic application. When you're standing on the street, you can't guess what the FSI is. When you're looking at it from the north side, unit number 12's garage is in the way, is shielding that massing. And then when you look on the south side, we pretty much have the same thing as we did for like the distance or the length of the south side is the same, almost the same as the existing home itself. We did this intentionally because, you know, this is a growing family of 4. They hope to have a 5th kid, but obviously that's not like promised. And they want to grow in place. They already live here and they're at its limits. I'm sure you guys can understand as well, is that, you know, you start to grow your family, you want to create a place for them, and you know, they need that 4th bedroom, they need an office space now because of COVID, and this ultimately impacts their quality of life. You know, for example, there are instances where the FSI is at an appropriate amount, whatever that means, but the facade is designed poorly, and when you see it from the street, it actually looks way bigger than it is. In this infill project, we're actually utilizing the circumstances given and taking advantage of them by designing something livable for a growing family of 4. Massing is based on perception, and the zoning bylaw is meant to decrease risk of incompatibility. In my opinion, I really don't think it's reasonable to decline an FSI request when the massing cannot be perceived from the street and no immediately adjacent neighbors are objecting it. And we're not impeding on anyone's enjoyment of their own property. And say we did shorten the building to meet the low FSI, but we kept that front facade and that south facade the way that it's designed, the way that it would be designed already. The house would be perceived in the exact same way because the massing is weighted towards the north side of the rear house. Good design should be focused on like what the long branch guideline suggests and not based on the number on the paper.
Yeah, Ms. Wong, can you wrap up? You're over 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually, we've made a real effort to do character, like you can tell with how we've shown the shadow study, where the windows are, you know, the vertical reference lines with the roof line, the materials, the color, the open gable roof lines. We're just trying to come to a middle ground here where, you know, we're providing that character, but we're also providing a great quality of life for a growing family of 4. And the zoning does not account for the occupancy load. And that's where we believe why it is minor in nature and how it fits the official plan, because it's close to transit, like the GO station and the surface transit priority line, which is like the subway or the streetcar, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. And, you know, I appreciate, you know, it looks like from that rendering we have up now that your client and you have gone to great lengths to try to have it fit in with the neighborhood in terms of its look. However, I guess the consensus is that it's just too big at 0.51 to even be supportable. So that's why the objections. Any questions for Ms. Wong or for any of the other speakers for that matter before we take this matter into committee for a decision? Members? No questions? Okay.
And sorry, am I allowed to ask a question to Christine, I believe, from the Long Branch?
Who are you? Sorry, who's speaking now?
Sorry, this is Brittany Wong.
No, you're done. You're done.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
You don't get to ask questions. It's not a, okay, you get a rebuttal, but not to question anyone else. Thank you. Okay, committee members, any follow-up discussion, questions, or I'll wait for a motion.
Danny Bellissimo would like to weigh in. It is my view, after reading all the letters of opposition here in the presentation very carefully, of people who know about the Long Branch Character Guideline, I find that this application is not consistent with the Long Branch Character Guideline. I find that planning staff has made a very good point of saying that we should not approve it. And I find that the FSI number, which is 50% more than required, than allowed, is not minor in nature. So therefore, I move for refusal of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. We have a seconder for that motion. Thank you.
Neil Palmer, second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
No.
Okay. Mr. Kamarick, it's unanimously refused. Application is refused. Thank you, Ms. Wong, and thank you to Ms. Mercado and the other neighbors. Okay. Our next application, actually, we got the two together. Items 24 and 25 are 89 and 91 James Street. These matters were both deferred from the May 25th, 2020 hearing.
Chair?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair.
Chair Clark.
Item 23, 1115 Albion.
Oh, sorry, I missed that one. Okay. We're less close to finishing than I thought. Okay, thank you, Miss, for letting me know that. 1155 Albion Road. And this is another this is an application to construct a new senior citizens building with 6 variances. We have concern from 3 neighbors. Planning has no concerns. We have a copy of the site-specific zoning bylaw, and we have urban forestry requesting conditions 2 and 3, and this matter was deferred from the October 6, 2020 hearing. Okay, registered to speak on this application is John Romanov, only one speaker. Mr. Romanov, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Romanov, architect for the project. 375 Parkside Drive is my address.
Okay, and I just want to point out we have also supporting lots of supporting material, and we have the latest planning memo is dated July 20th, 2021, and that they have no issues or concerns with this application being scheduled. And I think in the a week earlier, they said, oh, it was just about scheduling. So I don't know, we haven't heard anything. Do we have a report from planning on this or no? I thought they said they had no problem, but they just said they had no concerns having it scheduled. And I guess we haven't heard from them, Mr. Carvalino, so we take that they have no concerns at this point. Or they had recommendations, again, subject to the site plan control. So we'll hear from the agent about that.
Chair, Chair Clark, if you look at the staff report from September, they wanted it, the site plan moved along?
Yeah, so I'm asking him, have they complied with that? That's why it was deferred. And since then, though, in July, the planner didn't quite say she's okay with the application. She said it's being looked at. So perhaps Mr. Romanov knows more. Mr. Romanov?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I would, there is a supporting material from Works Department that is part of our site plan application submission. So we were deferred originally due to not having our site plan into planning so that they could review it and have Works also review it from the point of view of the increased number of units to see if there was any detrimental effect from their perspective. They've gone through it and they've issued back a lengthy report saying that everything is good, basically. So from a site plan perspective through Works Department, there are no issues. Planning is, I believe that
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, there is correspondence on file. If you look at the digital agenda, July 20th from planning, there's an email from community planning. If staff can just bring it up.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said that they have no issues with it being scheduled. But I said we haven't heard further from community planning other than these 2 memos, which just talked about the scheduling, but we haven't received an actual either no concern or an actual memo for recommending anything else. So it seemed to imply that they were, maybe something was going to be forthcoming. So continue, Mr. Romanov. And I guess if you can address in your presentation, because the people aren't here, if you can address the letters of opposition and the letter of concern in your presentation.
Of course. I would just submit, as far as planning goes, I believe that they are waiting the outcome of this C of A to comment further on our site plan approval process. As far as the overall proposal goes, as committee is aware, there is a site-specific bylaw on this site for the 5-story seniors project that was originally approved and went through site plan approval process and actually was ready for building issuance. So the purpose of coming back with the additional story was that the proponent of the project went out to get people to look after this project on a basis of running a seniors building. And it came back that the project wasn't viable with the number of units in relationship to the amount of amenity space that was in the building. So hence the application for the additional story. So I would submit from a neighbor's perspective, the 5-story building certainly has some impact, but I would submit that the addition of the 6-story has negligible impact over and above the 5-story. We did submit an overall shadow study that indicated that there was no additional shadow impact of any significance with the additional story. And we also have a little presentation in front of you at the moment that I can go through. Just looking at what was approved as a 5-story and what the 6-story building would look like. So if we go to the next slide. So both buildings are identical in terms of site plan or siting of the building on the site. There's no change to the actual footprint of the building, no change to any of the landscaping that was approved. And I would also note that where you see on that drawing where it says just to the south of the building, there's an open green space that is being deeded over to conservation, both in this proposal and in the previous proposal. So that would be consistent with both proposals. So the footprint again is identical, landscaping is identical. If we go to the next slide. So this just gives a very basic overview of the differences in the two proposals in terms of zoning. Again, the 6-story, because it is a site-specific bylaw, was tied to the number of stories, tied to the FSI, tied to the number of units that were originally proposed in the 5-story building. So basically, if you touch anything on the building, it triggers a variance. If we go to the next slide. So this is the ground floor of both the original 5-story building and the proposed 6-story building. So again, identical, parking layout is identical. And I guess while I'm mentioning parking, so the parking was originally at 0.3, which is the bylaw requirement, gave us 22 parking spaces. We don't have space on the site for additional parking. So we're looking at a variance for the parking that would bring that down to 0.26, I believe is what is being accepted by the transportation and suggested as part of the variance that would, if approved, would be at a 0.26. That would give us the 22 parking spots for the additional units. Next slide, please. These are the typical units on the floor, which is the same, identical to the original 5-story building, identical to the 6-story building. So what we are doing is adding on one of these floors to the building. Next slide, please. So this gives you an idea of the scale of the height of the building. So I would submit from street level, the presentation of the building as a 5-story or 6-story is going to be virtually the same. Next slide, please. These are the side elevations. Again, you can see the difference in height of the 1-story presentation. The slide down on the lower right-hand corner, sorry, would be, or the picture down in the lower right-hand corner would be the facing towards the west to a couple of the neighbors that had presented some objections to the proposal. Next slide, please. So I think from a perspective standpoint, I think you can, at least I would suggest that the 6-story doesn't add to a significant increase to the massing or to the articulation of the building. Again, the architecture, the definition of the building is identical to the 5-story building that was previously approved. Next slide, please. Again, two other views of the building. From the southwest corner, which is again presenting to
please try to wrap up.
Yep, I'm just about done.
Okay.
Sorry. Yep. So next slide. I think that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Romanov? Okay, in that case, is someone ready to make a motion?
Danny Bellissimo, I'd like to emphasize that the 6-star is not really a whole floor, it's only half a floor approximately. And I find that the impact to the street is not any greater than what was previously approved. So I find that the variances are minor in nature and move for approval. Conditional, I believe there's 2 conditions here, forestry and transportation.
Forestry conditions.
Is there not transportation? Did I get that wrong? Okay.
Transportation was asking for a study, which I believe was done.
Okay. Okay. So just forestry then. Thank you.
Previous time, yes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. Second for Ms. Bellisimo's motion. Thank you. Mr. Palmer, all in favor? Mr. Kamarick and Ms. Ruddick, you have your hands up? You're opposed?
No.
You're opposed? Okay,
Correct.
the motion carries 3-2. The application is approved. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Romanov. We'll see you again. Okay, our next application, we're going to have a 2-for-1 special. Both we're going to hear items 24 and 25 together, 89 James and 91 James. Same applicant. I believe this one, as opposed to another one today, was the same owner. Planning is recommending the applications be refused. Planning clarifies that their previous email, these matters were deferred from May 25th, 2021, and planning has clarified that their memo of refusal still stands, and as well the counselor is still opposed, and we know that the Long Branch people will be speaking at the hearing, and they are here. So just going to the speakers list, we have Craig Reitz, the speaker, the agent for the applicant. And then we have several of the speakers we've already heard from this afternoon. Christine Mercado, perhaps Christine wants to go last. Sandy Donald, who we heard on previous application. Judy Gibson is making an appearance, so we have 2 speakers from the Long Branch. Stephen Vell at 42 Ash, and Ron Jameson, he wasn't available before. We'll see if he's available on this one. Okay, so first up is Craig Reitz. Mr. Reitz, please identify yourself, and you got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, Craig Ritz at CAR Design Studio, the agent for the owner. We're at 53 Chauncey Avenue. Good afternoon. Thank you all for your time today. As you mentioned, it's clear there's some opposition to this proposal, and I hope that today I'll be able to demonstrate that what is being proposed is not as out of context or negatively impacts the neighborhood as many may believe. Firstly, I do want to clarify that no trees are being proposed to be removed in this proposal. The memo from Urban Forestry dated July 27th states that the proposal requires the removal of a healthy bylaw protected tree. This is actually not the case. We do have draft arborist reports and tree protection plans that have been prepared, and the new 5-centimeter diameter city tree on the boulevard will be protected by a 1.2 meter TPZ hoarding as required. And the proposed driveway of number 89 James Street would not encroach into this protection zone. I unfortunately didn't realize that our arborist reports were still draft copies, and I did not get this uploaded to the AIC, so I do apologize for that. But we would obviously be making a submission to Urban Forestry for their approval as part of this process if it was moving forward. But again, we are not proposing removal of any trees. And much of the design proposal has been prepared with maintaining all existing trees. It was top of mind in this process. We've worked through the design process to eliminate as many variances as possible with extensive correspondence with the zoning examiners and a number of revisions being made, which the planning department has acknowledged in their staff report of August 4th. These lot frontages are obviously very difficult to work with, particularly with respect to allowable FSI, and these frontages are existing conditions, not lots that we requested to be split. In this process, we've looked at all of the issues related to the applicable zoning bylaws, the Long Branch community guidelines, and urban forestry requirements to try and find a solution that makes sense and to satisfy as many requirements as possible. I would like to address the staff report and concerns related to the proposed floor space index and massing. We believe that context is very important in this case with respect to the proposed building massing and the existing streetscape. The August 4th planning report states on page 3 that the immediate context consists of 1- and 2-story dwellings. And if we can reference the submitted presentation material that we provided, I had some figures, some photos and figures that we'd submitted previously. This is our material, just to confirm.
Sorry, when was the presentation material submitted?
We saw it on the AIC just the other day. It was submitted prior to the previous.
Was there new
hearing,
material
but
submitted for this hearing, or was that from the previous hearing?
it was from the previous hearing.
Okay.
Those are done there. Thank you. So if we were to look at figures 5, 6, and 7. You'll see that directly across the street from the subject properties are 2 low-rise apartment buildings, which are essentially 3.5 stories in height from the sidewalk, with a 2.5-story multi-unit building to the east at number 88, which is shown in figure 7. Further to existing context, figure 3 shows the existing dwelling at number 93 James Street, which is directly adjacent to the west of the subject properties, and it's 2.5-story in mass with an integrated front-facing garage, similar to what we're proposing. And figure 4 shows the 2.5-story multi-unit building directly adjacent to the subject properties to the east. With respect to massing of the proposed dwellings and the adjacent properties, if we could reference figure 8. This was included in our community guideline checklist that was submitted to planning, which shows a partial streetscape showing the relationship between the 2 proposed dwellings and the adjacent multi-unit building at number 87 and the 2.5-story dwelling at number 93. As you can see in the streetscape diagram, we've maintained a reasonable horizontal alignment with similar main floor height and height of porches with the dwelling at number 93. As is desired under the Long Branch Community Guideline. The heights of these elements also creates a strong visual line with the large balconies of the multi-unit building at number 87. And we've designed the entries to be inset and create a break in the facades to reduce their presence, help soften the roof lines, and use the box bay elements to provide additional articulation of the facades. Further to the issue of massing, subtle grading changes have been proposed, which allow the dwellings to be brought down in a height to a more appropriate scale at the main front wall, while maintaining a higher grade along the sides and rear of the dwellings, which helps bring down the height of the dwellings visually. And as I stated earlier, we believe context is very important and feel that, as illustrated in these examples from a massing standpoint, the proposed dwellings are not out of context. And these proposed dwellings are compliant with the height bylaw. And if not for the requirement of a window in the sidewall and gable detail to accommodate this window, we would have been able to eliminate variance 3 for height of main walls. Further to the existing trees, we recognize the importance of protecting existing trees and maintaining the tree canopy. This is a significant issue, not only to urban forestry, but referenced in the community guideline and frequently mentioned in the letters of objection that have been submitted. The proposed dwellings were designed with the integrated front garage and resulting massing to accommodate it, so as not to remove the mature 97-meter tree in the rear yard, which would have to be destroyed if detached rear yard garages were to be constructed. The detached rear yard garages are a suggested solution in the community guidelines to address garages on similar lot frontages. But as you can see, if we look at figure 9, we would have to destroy the tree in the rear yard to accommodate the rear yard garage option, as well as a consolidated consolidated driveway required for this would also impact the 30-centimeter street treat as well. And another issue that was raised by Urban Forestry in their July 27th memo is their concern of a permanent loss of viable planting space in the front yard. The extent of existing asphalt in front of numbers 89 and 91
Yeah,
is clearly shown.
Mr. Reach, you want to try to wrap up? I've given you 7.5 minutes because it was 2 applications, but please wrap up.
Okay. I guess I'll just jump into the gross floor area, FSI, 62%. What would be allowed at 35% for these lots is 1,049 square feet. This is obviously a very small size detached single-family dwelling. At an FSI of 62% may be perceived as high versus allowable 35%, but the fact remains that as proposed, the dwellings would still be fairly modest 3-bedroom homes under 1,900 square feet. You know, it's always been the intent to never design something here that was above and beyond anything that was previously approved. And at 62%, what's proposed is equal to or less than some recent approvals. You know, obviously want to wrap up, but building length seems to be an issue in the community, but what we're proposing is 2.7 meters less than allowable in length and 4.7 meters less than allowable depth, which we feel is very significant.
Okay, Mr. Reitz, if you can please wrap up, please.
Okay.
I gave you extra time.
I guess, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think you covered the major points, and I just want to clarify something I said at the outset. There is, in fact, new planning memos dated April 4th. At first, they were just a memo that it stands, and they go through the fact that you were given an opportunity after May to make changes. You did bring it down from 0.7 to point whatever. You did make changes, but they feel it's, I think the summary is they feel it's still not enough, and that it presents this 3-story. That's their main concerns. So let's hear from, I guess, the neighbors, unless someone has any questions at this point for the agent. Either from understanding the plans, Mr. Kamarik.
I wonder if the agent can speak to if these 2 lots were being proposed as 2 semis, would you be meeting most of the guidelines then?
Good question.
The only issue, we would eliminate a variance for the side yard setback. Side of, I'm not quite sure the question we still have.
Well, yeah, but it would be a different FSI number that you'd be allowed to build out to, wouldn't it?
Not that I'm aware, based on the same.
Okay. Maybe that's my error then. It's okay.
Yeah,
and
we have the same. It would be if we're proposing the same footprint on the same lot, then no, it would be the same FSI.
You'd still have the 2 main planning concerns of the FSI, GFA / and the 3 presenting as a 3-story. Right. So, okay, let's hear from Ms. Mercado. Do you want to go last as last time? You're up next on the list.
Yes, please.
And what about Judy?
Yes, please.
We'll put you both at the end.
If you could put Judy just ahead of me, that would be
okay. That's the batting order. Okay, Sandy Donald. Welcome back, Mr. Donald.
Yes. Again, Sandy Donald or Alexander Donald from 3436th Street. Now, I had put my presentation together, a separate one for 89 and 91, so I will sort of try to quickly go through sort of the 2, one after the other. One of the planning acts.
Mr.
I know that.
Mr. Donald, they're exactly the same. You telling me you're going to make 2 presentations, one on 89 and one for 91?
I originally, what I put in was 2 separate presentations.
Okay, anyway, you have 5 minutes.
They weren't sort of each other either. So, but, okay, quickly going. Okay, one of Planning Act's test is allowing a zoning bylaw variances where it is minor, not major or even moderate. The bylaws are in the numbers. In the official plan, neighborhoods development criteria, number 8, it states zoning bylaws will contain numerical standards, site standards for matters such as building type, height, density, lot size, lot depth. In layman's terms, it's using the size of the numbers to protect the neighborhood. I had earlier mentioned in the 3036th Street decision that was OMB in regards to if council had wanted 0.5 to 0.7, they would have put them in the standards. But also further to that one, it says for the board to ignore the magnitude of the variance, so almost double the maximum permissible, would be conclude that there is effectively no valid rationale for 0.35 standard. In fact, the rationale is clear. The 0.35 standard is intended to reinforce where appropriate the historical pattern of relatively small homes on relatively large lots. Is unusually low in this neighborhood only because low FSI would effectively implement OP policies that seek to preserve the neighborhood. Second, the FSI standard, because they address the relationship of the building to its lots, are particularly important when evaluating variances proposals, as they are critical limits on overdevelopment. Finally, in the broader context, the board finds that the FSI standard of 0.355 indirectly supports provincial interests. PPS and growth policies that promote intensification do not intend the same size houses be built on smaller lots, which applies to this application. What is minor? The variance request must be minor under Planning Act. It states in the city's own brochures, they explain that what a variance is. They use the example of 10 meters height bylaw and request for a variance of 10.5, 5%. Oxford Dictionary, not very large or important. Webster, inferior size or degree. Gauge, small, less important or of significant thing. To say that a deviation of 27% from standard, side yard side back, is minor is absurd. Saying a deviation of 77% FSI from the standard minor is completely distortion of the word. Big is not small, slow is not fast. Variance of this magnitude cannot be called minor. If one was caught speeding at 27% over the limit, you would be fined several $100s. At double the speed limit, you would have your car impounded. If in the building code, if you are off by 10% of the regulations, you have to rebuild. In searching the Provincial Planning Act, Toronto's official plan and the bylaws, there is no specific definition to the word, or there is no new definition to the word minor.
Yeah, I just want to let you know you have less than 2 minutes left, so if you want to keep giving examples ad nauseum of what minor is, or just talk about the specifics of this particular two applications, because you got a minute and a half left.
In the decision for 823rd Street, which was a 25-foot lot, an FSI of 3.5 would only permit house of 1,100 square feet on the proposed lot, 25 foot. In his view, this would be too small for modern homes with integrated garages. However, the desire of homeowners for a larger house is not a criteria for approving a variance under thing. I talked to the 93 mono, which I talked to before. The zoning bylaws were never intended to support big houses on small lots. FSI 77%, side yard spec off by 28 for center wide. It is difficult to understand how an oversized house can be built on an undersized lot. This application fails the test of meeting the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaws or the official plan.
Thank you, sir.
That's two put together.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, you know, I hear it just, you know, everyone comes with the mathematical, and that's why certain areas, I remember 20 years ago asking the then chief planner, why don't you raise Rosedale's, you know, because no one's building it, whatever it was, 0.3, and it just gives them a right to just take a look at every application. You're perfectly right. If they raise the standard, there'd be less business at Committee of Adjustment. But there are many, I don't know how many, thousands of applications there are in the city, because the question is how many and to what extent, but it's not always numerical. At least that's what I've learned.
All applications so far handled by the T-Lab on 25-foot lots have never approved an FSI of this magnitude or side lots similar to that.
Yeah, you told us that on the last application too. So anyway, it's not always numeric, as you know. So, again, speeding ticket, you're right. You get a bigger speeding ticket for going 30 over than going 10 over. And you lose your license at 50 over. So that is what it is. Thank you again, Mr. Donald. Be well. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Donald before I think that's his last application for the afternoon. Okay, so let's hear from Stephen Vella.
Hi, how are you?
We're good, Mr. Vella. How are you?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. My name is Stephen Vella. My family and I have lived at 42 Ash Crescent, a well-maintained 100-year-old home since 2002, and before that, 10 years on Alder Crescent, also in Long Branch. Our 3-bedroom house has an FSI of 0.19, and we raised 3 children there. The reason I am here is developments that happen on Ash affect developments that happen on James and vice versa. One of the first overbuilds in Long Branch was on Ash, and we see the effects throughout the neighborhood. I feel that if that original Ash overdevelopment was refused at the OMB, we might not be here today. The City of Toronto is constantly talking about affordable housing and how important starter homes are for young families. Well, the 2 houses at 89 and 91 are the perfect starter home. It does not have to be created. There's no money needed. It already exists. Families that want to purchase houses for themselves are in competition with developers that do not have the same budgetary concerns. They need to be on a level playing field. There is no such thing as a fixer-upper anymore. We have to change that by enforcing the current development restrictions that are placed on development in Long Branch. Nothing new has to be written, only the current development requirements have to be enforced. When the developers know that overbuilding is not allowed, they will not overpay on the sale price of homes in the neighborhood. Currently, if a developer wants a property, they are willing to overpay, passing the extra cost of the purchase price to the development. This is pushing the entry-level real estate market out of the hands of families and into the hands of speculators who are creating houses for millionaires. The developers are not paying for the house, they're paying for the land. The houses at 89 and 91 were owner occupied before the current owners purchased it. Instead of a family purchasing a fixer-upper for themselves, the house was taken on speculation, creating instability. The allowable FSI for single-family homes have been 0.35 since the 1960s in Long Branch, since the 60s. It has not changed even through various municipal amalgamations. It is not a surprise to the developers. Long Branch should not have to suffer because the developer bought in the wrong neighborhood. The applicant just said that lot frontages are difficult to deal with within the prescribed FSI, referring to the size of his lot. This to me says it was a bad investment. Not every property can be purchased for speculation. It is a thoughtful process, not a free-for-all. The 3 variances asked for are major, even if looked at individually. When looked at together, they create a massive and obtrusive building that is out of place with the neighborhood character. The maximum permitted height of all side exterior walls is 7 meters. They're looking for 120% variance. At FSI of 0.62, where the maximum was 0.35, that's 177% variance. It's not possible that 177% is minor. So I'm asking the Committee of Adjustments to support Councillor Grimes. I'm asking them to support the neighborhood, and I'm asking them to support planning, who said, as currently proposed, the new detached dwelling with inner garage will be perceived as a 3-story dwelling from the street level, i.e. a garage on the ground floor with 2 levels above the garage, and therefore is not consistent with the prevailing physical character of the immediate area and does not meet the general intent of the Long Branch character guidelines. As such, planning staff are of the opinion that the proposal does not respect and reinforce the prevailing character of the neighborhood and thus is not in keeping with the general purpose and intent of the Long Branch character guidelines, official plan, and the zoning bylaws. Planning staff therefore recommend that the above noted minor variance application be refused. I couldn't have said it any better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bella. Is anyone have any questions for Mr. Bella? Okay, I just noticed that there is, because we're sort of doing a mirror application, I'm looking at the speakers on one application, but I see that we do have a speaker on 2025 that we didn't have registered for 24, and that's because they're right next door to 91 James, and that's the Carries at 93. So let's hear from them next, either Pay or Beverly Carey. We're right next door at 93.
It's actually Patrick Carey.
Oh, okay, it said Pay here. I'm sorry.
Oh,
okay.
typo.
Patrick.
Patrick, yeah. But I'll be speaking. It's Beverly Carey. And first, I'd just like to adopt the statements made by Mr. Donald and Mr. Vella. We live next door to 91 James. We share the driveway. our house is 27 feet long. The proposed dwelling is 47 feet long. It will directly and severely impact our house. If it gets approved, we'll basically be living in a laneway. Our house is almost 100 years old. And my next point, thank you for bringing up the diagram. My next point, oh, if we can go back to that diagram. My next point is Mr. Reitz was saying that he said twice in his testimony that our house is 2.5 stories. Well, it clearly says in his diagram that it's only 1 story. And our second floor is actually only a half a story. It's not a full floor. And so this building will, as I said, we'll be looking at a wall, and it's going to severely devalue our property. It will impact the privacy and light, because we will no longer have any light coming in the windows on our second floor, and we'll be in total darkness and privacy. And so I'm gonna say, I mean, you've heard this in many applications today, that the builders come in, buy up the bungalows, try to build these monster homes. If they want monster homes, why don't they go to Woodbridge or Uxbridge or somewhere else? Because we don't want a neighborhood where all the houses look the same and are giant size and oversized for the property. That's the beauty of Long Branch, is all those small houses. And as Mr. Vella said, the starter homes, the fixer-uppers, the handyman specials, those are all going to be gone. And that's, like I said, the beauty of the neighborhood. You come out here, it's like you're living in the country because of the fresh air, all the trees, and a little bit nervous just trying to see what else I was going to say. Nobody from the builder has approached us about the plans or anything to say what they had proposed or how it's going to impact us. Or
So, ma'am, you're living
you know.
next door and they never knocked on your door, or I don't know if they're going to say COVID, or
Nope,
sent you
they've
anything in the
never
mail, or
approached
called you
us.
up or anything like that. And
No, in fact, there was a young man that came here last summer. He was the contractor, I think, and he said that because he was taking some pictures and whatnot, and said that he would come by with plans, but he never did. And then he came a couple weeks ago and mowed the lawn at 89, because there was apparently a complaint about the length of the grass and everything getting a bit high. So, but yeah, never said anything about approaching us about plans and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, you can see by the diagram that this is going to go way past our house, and we'll basically be looking at a wall.
Okay.
And I think that's it. And my 5 minutes are up.
You actually have another minute and 15 seconds, but you're not allowed to lend it to any of the other neighbors or to Long Branch.
No, it's just us.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation, ma'am. And I think we clearly understand what you have to say.
Thank you.
So, does anyone have any questions for Beverly Carey before we move on? Okay, so the next speaker, I guess, are the dynamic duo from the Long Branch Association. We'll hear from Judy Gibson first, and then Christine Mercado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, Judy. Did we want to try Ron Jameson again?
Okay, we've tried him twice. This lucky number 3.
He's no longer on the list.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
I wouldn't, they're in capable hands. We've heard from several good speakers, and now we're going to hear from the executive of the Long Branch. So let's just keep moving.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the members of the committee. My name is Judy Gibson. I'm the Vice Chair of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association, and I chair the Tree Canopy Preservation and Enhancement Committee. And thank you for putting my letter up on the screen. So I wanted to point out at the beginning that both Community Planning and Urban Forestry are recommending refusal of this application. And I know the applicant said that they're working on an arborist plan and a tree protection plan, but Urban Forestry has written 3 memos so far on this application recommending refusal. The first one was April 1st. They wrote another one May 14th, and the most recently July 27th. So the applicant has had plenty of notice that Urban Forestry wanted that tree protected, the honey locust city tree protected, and the applicant still to date at this hearing has not put forth a plan of how that tree is being protected. In fact, when I look at the plans that the applicant has proposed, the driveway of 89 James is running right through that honey locust. And that's a very healthy tree. It's, I actually went by it the other day just to take a look at the state of it. It's healthy, it's thriving, it's doing well. It's probably about 12 feet tall now, so it's thriving, and they're planning on running the driveway right through it. So I'm not quite clear how they're planning on protecting that tree. So Urban Forestry is objecting to this, and planning is as well. In addition, our city councilor has submitted a letter recommending refusal. And I went through the file. There's 14 different residents of the community, some on James, some on neighboring streets and behind, but they've all written individual personalized letters of objection to this application. So there's massive community objection to the 2 stories over the garage on James Street because it doesn't fit the character. Right now, when you walk down the street, you see a garden and you see a space between 89 and 91 that will be removed by the reduced side yard setback. When you walk by, you see the trees in behind. The applicant said they don't want to put a garage in the back. There is no garage there now. So I know planning is undergoing consultation right now. City's looking at changing parking requirements. There's nothing in the Planning Act that says a house has to have a garage, and the current house doesn't have a garage. So I'm sorry, but I don't accept their rationale that they need a garage for this house. And of course, we want the tree saved in the back, but there's no reason for there to be a garage and 2 stories above it. There isn't one there now. So this application will result in the unnecessary removal of a protected tree. Long Branch has been the hardest hit neighborhood for tree canopy loss in Etobicoke. We've experienced 43.4% loss, and that's the hardest hit of all of Ward 3. So every healthy tree really does matter. We do need to retain healthy trees, and we need to help them thrive. And the city I've listed, if you go down a little further, I've listed the city's official plan policies to protect trees and include and protect the urban forest when looking at new development. And the applicant has not done that in this case. So this tree, it's a valuable member of the Long Branch tree canopy. It's a key defining characteristic of the Long Branch neighborhood. It will contribute its environmental benefits for many years to come. And we do need more green infrastructure. This application is asking for variances that are not minor. We object to the FSI of 0.62. That is not the prevailing FSI. And I believe Ms. Mercado is going to share data to show that the prevailing FSI is actually below the 0.35. We object to the reduced side yard setback of 0.65, and we object to the increased main wall height of 7.66. As the applicant showed in their street view, these 2 houses that they're proposing will tower above the neighbors. They'll tower above Ms. Carey's, and they'll tower above the triplex on the other side. So instead of a view of trees and green space, there will be a view of 2 garages and 2 stories above it with no view back to the back. So this is not a minor change to the character by setting this precedent. And we would ask that this committee please refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Any questions from Ms. Gibson before we move on to Ms. Mercado? None, so okay.
Hello, committee members. It's Christy Mercado from the Long Branch Neighborhood Association. So I actually was in contact with Mr. Jameson, and I guess the word catastrophic failure is the only appropriate phrase. So he does extend his apologies, but his objections still stand, which he articulated in his letter of objection. So moving on to my letter, if you could actually pull it up, please. So I actually did a joint letter because they were mirrored applications, and then I articulated my versions in 2 applications. So I'll just speak to my letter if that's all right. I'm just waiting. Nope, actually it would be, sorry, it would be my previous letter from the previous application. So I did do an update, but the actual letter with the exhibits would be in the previous where it was deferred. That's it. Thank you so much. Okay, so if we can just go straight to page 3. So as the association, we do acknowledge that there has been a slight reduction in FSI and there has been a slight reduction in front wall height. But we still do support planning's position that the application still doesn't fit in with the character of the street. I will be dovetailing a little bit on what the other speakers were saying, as well as what planning actually stated. So specifically, the planning report did state 2 stories above a garage, and I can support with data that the 2 stories above a garage has never been subject to the Long Branch character guidelines. And there is one exception, which is actually under review now at TLAB. But that is by no means a defining piece. So if this is approved, it will lead to 2 houses that will dominate and overwhelm the neighbors, specifically 93 James, 95 James, 97 James, and 99 James. The applicant actually spoke about context, and what I would like to point out is that on this specific street is that it is a length of the street that are modest-sized homes. That would fit into the context of having minor FSI variances, but also are small enough so they could be classified as more affordable. So you've got 99 James at 0.27, 97 James at 0.21, 95 at 0.30, 93 at 0.41, and 91 at 0.25, and 89 at 0.27. So the proposed applications, if we can go to the next page, please. As Ms. Carey said, if we look at the existing context, which we're required to do for the official plan, is look at what's on site. In the green, that is what is existing now. So this is from the view from the backyards at 99 James. Looking east, and as you can see, all the backyards actually line up. So everyone has the same view. It's very equal as far as amenity space goes. And on the right, that is circled in red. This is what the Careys are speaking about. Long blank walls that are featureless and actually would end up boxing them in. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Did we skip one? We're missing a slide. Can you go back up one, please? Up. No, okay, well, it'll show up. Okay, so so next one, please. So in speaking with the FSI, sorry, this is the one, I can speak to this one. And so this is a condition that Ms. Carey is actually speaking about, where she's going to start getting into that boxed in feeling that she really, that would actually change the character of her street and her amenity space. So that's where we're talking about impact. And so if you want to speak about context, let's talk about context that's happening right next door in the form of a next door neighbor. So if you can go to the slide just before this, please. Thank you. So this is the FSI map, and this is the data that actually supports what planning was speaking about. So if you're looking at the existing context.
Yeah, if you can try to wrap up because you're at 5 minutes, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, for sure. So if you look at the existing context in the light green, in the light blue, 0.35 is the prevailing. In the dark green, 0.6, in the dark green, 0.35 and less than 0.61 is there, but it's certainly not near what the applicant is proposing. And as far as 2 floors above a garage, that actually only occurs 8 times in the neighborhood, and the FSI above 0.61 only occurs 14 times in 200 lots in the entire zone. So when you're talking about a proposal of 0.61 in the neighborhood, it's not adequately represented to be considered a minor variance. So I would support planning's position to not support either of these applications, and that you support refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Christine Mercado before we go back to the applicant for his rebuttal? Okay, Mr. Reitz.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just touch on something that was said earlier about the driveway of number 89 running through the street tree. This is not correct. Again, my apologies for not having our tree protection plan on file here, but it's sitting in front of me. We've looked at it numerous times. This is not true, and they're not proposing that tree to be removed. Just further to parking, front yard parking is not allowed under the tree bylaw. But also want to speak further just to Mrs. Carey's comments. It was my understanding that conversations had taken place between the builder and her and Mr. Carey. To the point I was told even there was conversation around slightly shifting the second floor west window. So there seems to be some misunderstanding there. I'm not quite sure. Obviously, I wasn't privy to that conversation, but if there weren't conversations, then that certainly should have taken place. But it's my understanding there actually were some conversations there. And just as far as, obviously you see this a lot, and I just feel that, defining this house as a monster or a massive home, I just find a little bit disingenuous. I understand people's concerns, certainly. I know change isn't always desired, and I certainly respect the opinion of, people who have spoken here today. One thing I just do want to touch on with respect to the depth of the dwellings is, again, I know I was rushing at the end of my presentation, but the depth that we've proposed, again, is 2.7 meters behind the maximum allowable length, and over 4 meters, 4.25 meters less than what's allowed in the bylaw for depth. And the house at number 39 in the Careys are, the existing depth of that house is less than half of what's allowed in building depth under the bylaw. So, I understand, again, the issues and concerns with feeling boxed in, but certainly seems extremely punitive when we're using a dwelling that's half the allowable building depth under the bylaw, and now all new dwellings are gauged against the depth of that dwelling. Again, a lot of what we proposed here was to save the trees, to save all the trees, not to remove any. Rear yard garages, again, would require the removal of the large mature tree in the rear yard. And when we look at all the issues here, even in the streetscape, we're not of the opinion that these are massive or that they're towering. I know Mrs. Carey mentioned that she considered herself a one-story house. If her house is considered one story, then what we're proposing certainly isn't considered 3. I think that's probably what I'd say at this point. Again, certainly just doing our best to do what we can in design and try and keep people happy. But at the end of the day, did feel that a house that is still under 1,900 square feet wasn't massive, and that we're trying to just put something together here that was livable and functional. And that probably concludes my points. Thank you all very much for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Reitz. Any questions from panel members for Mr. Reitz or any of the speakers?
Danny Bellissimo has a question about the report from July 27th from Forestry saying that a tree will be removed. Can you tell me which tree that is? It says tree number 1. Healthy tree will be removed.
So this tree wasn't even initially indicated from our surveyor on the survey, and subsequently and for that reason didn't end up on our site plans. Again, it's unfortunate, but I do have our arborists have been out. They in turn have included the tree now on their tree protection plan, because obviously it's existing. Again, in their plan, it shows as it's only 5 centimeters. Actually, the city says it's 4 centimeters in diameter. Our arborist has been out since. It's now 5 centimeters in diameter, and they're suggesting a 1.2 as required, a 1.2 meter TPZ that would protect that. And again, as I mentioned earlier, that TPZ is actually outside of the proposed driveway for number 89. There won't be an encroachment there. The other street tree, the .30, we made some alterations to make sure that there was no issues there and not interfering. We've even indicated on the site plan of number 91 that no to remain untouched, no scraping, digging, or changes to be allowed with respect.
Very good. I just wanted to clarify because I heard a contradiction there. So you're saying that the existing trees will not be removed?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for any of the speakers? And if not, let's take it into committee for a decision. And they're mirror applications, so we can have it in sort of one motion unless there's something different on one of the two applications, but I don't believe that's the case.
Danny Bellissimo is going to try to get the ball rolling in terms of this. I find this application very similar to the previous one. And it's rare where I see that you have the Long Branch Residents Association who know the character guidelines opposed. You have planning staff who know the guideline opposed. You have forestry who have issues are opposed. And then you have the councillor who's opposed, who's asked that this be deferred, I believe, and refined. And that has not been that recommendation of the council was not taken advantage of by the applicant. And then I hear that the applicant did not talk to the neighbors, according to some of the neighbors. So I'm going to move for refusal of the application. And we'll find it's minor in nature, and I find there's lots of opposition to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. So you have a second for Mr. Bellissimo's motion. Ms. Ruddick, thank you. All in favor? Okay, I don't see Mr. Palmer or I don't see Mr. Palmer on the screen. I don't see Mr. Kamerick's hand up. So we'll have to ask a verbal poll. Mr. Kamerick, I didn't see you're opposed to the motion.
I am.
Sorry?
I think yes, I am. I believe the houses proposed are modest. I believe if you look at the very local context, you've got multi-unit residential across the street. You've got multi-unit residential next door. And I think the applicant is making a reasonable proposition of some reasonable housing.
Yeah, okay, and I did note Mr. Bellissimo said they did actually make changes. They obviously weren't as much sufficient, but they did make some changes.
I would have liked to have seen a little bit, a little bit more on that. That's
and as well, even though the neighbor did say she wasn't consulted, Mr. Reitz in his rebuttal did say that they actually talked about moving windows and that there indeed was some consultation. Mr. Palmer, we don't see up on the screen. So I don't know what your position is on this. Is Mr. Palmer there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think he dropped off the call. I don't see his name in the list either anymore.
Mr. Chair, I don't think he was present for much of the the material or the evidence. So I would recommend that we mark him down as absent for these two applications, and that the panel.
Okay, I wasn't noticing who was up there. It's because sometimes it drops off one of the pictures because it's a a square with 4 pictures and there's 5 of us. So, okay, in that case, I'm going to have to. And this is quite important. So perhaps we should find out if he indeed did hear the application and it's just not on the screen, because that is going to determine the outcome of this application. I can tell you. Because
try to contact.
I agree with Mr. Kamerick, which would create a tie. So it's very relevant to find out as to whether he heard the application or not. Typically, it doesn't make a hill of beans, but in this case, it will determine the outcome. So. Did he have to leave? Is it a communication problem, or was he actually hearing everything and then he will participate? So why don't we stand this down at least, or till we do or maybe can someone try calling him on his cell phone just to find out if he heard the application and if he wishes to participate accordingly. It could be relevant. We just have to know if he was present or not. Hey, Mr. Palmer, here's the big question.
Okay,
Were
so
you
I
present
missed-
for that application?
I missed about the first 5 to 10 minutes for the applicant's presentation and heard the opponents.
Okay, so the question is, based on what you heard, are you in support or opposed to the application? Because if you were present just now, we're in a, Mr. Bellissimo brought a motion, was seconded by Ms. Ruddick. Mr. Comeric was opposed. I feel similar to Mr. Comeric, but I cannot vote to make a tie. So the question is, if you didn't hear the applicant and you're still prepared, and you're prepared to approve it because you haven't felt the neighbors have, or if you're in favor of refusal, then it doesn't matter. So we have to know what your position is. Or if you feel that you can't
I
make
think
a
I
decision.
would, I think I
Could
would
ask a
refuse the
question?
application.
Sorry, I'm the mover. Could I ask a question? Neil Palmer, hear my motion?
Mr.
I did.
Bellissimo, can you please just pipe down? I'm dealing with this. We're telling
Yeah,
him,
but I
I'm
had
telling
to,
him that
since
there's
I
a
moved
motion.
that you seem to be extending the motion, and I wanted to make sure that you did not ask the question if you heard my motion. Thank you.
Yeah, he knows that
I
there's a
heard the
motion on the
motion.
table to refuse the application. It was seconded by Ms. Ruddick, and Mr. Comeric was opposed to that. I would tend to agree with him. So the big question is whether Mr. Palmer wishes to participate. So thank you for your input. Yes, Mr. Palmer.
I refuse.
You're opposed?
Refuse
so
the
that's it.
application.
Okay, so it's a moot point. So the application, you've heard it, you participated, the motion carries 3-2, the application is refused. That's all we have to do. Perfect. Okay, let's move on to the next. And thank you all the speakers, Mr. Ritz, and all the neighbors. Item number 26 is our last application of the afternoon, and that was beyond both. It's a mirror. We don't have to make two motions. Item number 26 is 2115 CODLIN Crescent. It's an application which was before this committee and deferred on June the 24th. Hold on a second. It's to legalize and maintain the west side storage shed, east side addition to the existing garage and covered rear porch. A previous Committee of Adjustment application approved variances related to an accessory structure in the rear yard for the use of a home occupation. And Committee of Adjustment, other Committee of Adjustment application approved variances related to a west side addition to the industrial building at the rear of the property. Planning was previously opposed. They said no changes were made when this matter was deferred. It still says their refusal report still stands. We have 4 letters of opposition, and we have some letter from the applicant claiming this is a ancillary to a school of welding being conducted on the property. We have one speaker, Nitin Malhotra, the agent. And we have the planning email supporting material from the applicant and the materials from the previous hearing back in June. So welcome, Mr. Malhotra. What's that?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Nitin Malhotra from N Architecture. We are the architects on this project, and you are correct. We have a Committee of Adjustment minor variance application to legalize and maintain the west side storage shed, the east side addition to the existing garage, and a covered rear porch. As you know, there's a school of welding on this site, which has been operating for more than 20 years, has all the licenses and certificates from the authorities. So it's a legal school of welding that's been ongoing. The existing garage on the property, in fact, acts as a welding shop come lab and classroom for the students who are learning how to weld. The shed in the back serves mostly as storage for the welding school. There is a canopy in question, which currently serves as really a canopy for the parking, which again has been provided for the commercial development, especially, it's coming over the accessible stalls. So you can see those three bubbles. The bubble on the top, in fact, is an addition to the existing shed. The bubble in the middle, as you can see, there is a garage, and that's been extended. And the bubble at the very bottom is, in fact, a canopy that's coming over the existing parking stalls. So we are all in agreement. The owner should have really asked for permission and proper approvals prior to doing these three minor, in our opinion, construction, but he did not. And, we are willing to go through the building permit process or the minor site plan amendment process, whatever it takes. As you had mentioned, Mr. Chair, we do have the staff comments, and they have refused this application not once, but twice. But in the end, we really don't agree with them. What they are saying and what they feel that this is an expansion of an existing residential dwelling. And what we are saying that, no, not really. This, in fact, is an expansion of an ongoing commercial use, which is present on the site for the last 20 years. You yourself mentioned there was a previous committee of adjustment application where certain privileges were granted for home occupant use. The city itself says the site is designated as core employment area, which are considered to be areas for business and economic activities. These three bubbles for which we are really requesting variances are nothing but expansion of the existing commercial activity. As you had mentioned, we have a letter that we had submitted to the city staff. If there's any possibility of bringing that letter on screen, because it does have some photographs, and we can all get a better idea as to what the ground situation is.
It's in the materials, I guess, from the previous hearing.
No, it's not. It's a new supporting material, maybe planning justification. It's a new material. Yeah. There we go. There we go. So we can just maybe go to the second page. The first is just pretty much what I've just mentioned. If we could zoom in a little bit. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So the first photograph, photograph number 2, let's start with that, gives the overall picture, right, of the site as you're standing at the entrance. Photograph number 1 is that of the garage in question for which we are seeking a minor variance. If we could zoom in a little bit more on the photograph of the garage itself, you will see that there is a sign of the welding school, which has been legally operating, on the site. School of Welding, if you can make that out, right? If we can just zoom out a little bit. And then if we were to go inside this garage, there basically, we have equipment for a welding lab and, storage and mostly training. The main facility, as you know, is actually across, where they have the commercial development at the back. But the garage is not being used for residential. It's actually being used for commercial, for as a part of the welding school. Yeah. If we can move on to the next couple of photographs, please. And this is another photograph of the garage in question. Photograph number 6 is that of the shed on, the west side of the property, which is again being used as a storage shed, mostly in tandem with the commercial activities which are going on towards the back of the site. If we can see some more photographs, that's another one of the garage. We have multiple signs. The sign is actually visible from Albion Road. So this red building that you see is the existing building where they have the actual commercial activity where they park the trucks and, they either do the welding or they train the students. And then these 3 other spots that, for which we are requesting variances are actually ancillary to this big commercial use, which has been ongoing on the site for 20 years. Next photograph. And then we have some certificates, some, School of Building, some authorization, their business card. So it's a legit use which has been ongoing on the site. Some promotional posters for their business. Again, some more certificates. Maybe they won an award. School of Welders, there we go. They actually won some sort of an award from a sports club. Okay. And then we are kind of pointing out that we have 3 examples in the
Sir,
neighborhood.
can you please wrap up?
2117.
Sir, can you wrap up, please? Thank you.
Absolutely. So we have 3 examples in the neighborhood: 2117 CODLIN, 2154 CODLIN, 2115 CODLIN, which seem to have had similar kind of storage structures creep up without any, how should I say, they just seem to have propped up, is what I've heard from our client. And they really seem to be residential in nature. In our case, it's a site which is really being used as a hybrid site. It was a residential neighborhood. Then the owner applied for work at home occupancy. Then, they actually built a commercial unit at the back. And then some of the ancillary units.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. You're going way over, but isn't the zoning ICI, ZR? So the zoning permits the
Yes.
welding. Welding's not allowed in
Yes, it does.
residential, right? So it's zoning is not an issue. Anyway,
Okay.
Please wrap up because I've let you go on. And
It's done, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Okay. Any questions for the agent, committee members, or is someone ready for a motion?
Yeah, Neil Palmer, question for the applicant. Is there a residential use on this property? Like, is someone living there?
Yes, so obviously through you, Mr. Chair, this is a classic live-work example. Yes, the house in the front of the property is being used by the owner who is indeed operating the welding school. So it's a live-work kind of a situation.
So there is welding labs or welding training going on in a residential house?
Well, there's a separate building at the.
It's a separate building?
There's a separate building at the back.
Yeah.
There's a separate building as commercial building at the back for which we have a recent site plan and a building permit. And the building is under construction, which is actually in addition to an existing commercial building, the big red building that we just saw. So the garage of the house and some of the storage units for the houses are primarily being used as ancillary, you could say, storage spaces to house their equipment for the big school, which has actually been operating on the site, legally operating on the site for 20 years.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, so the additions to the residence are not associated with the residence. It's associated with the industrial use that's also operating on the property.
That's right. That's correct, Mr. Palmer.
But they're separated and yeah, they're separated.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so it's a complicated situation.
So why is community planning opposed? You had your, they had that negative report before the deferral. It said you were going to consult. Did you consult? And why haven't they sort of said nothing happened, so we're still opposed. So,
Mr. Chair, we are as befuddled as you are. We have no idea. We had the same kind of discussions with them. I don't know if there's staff present, if they can talk as to why they're still opposed to something that we see, that a site that has full approvals, and the use, in fact, is a furthering of the existing commercial use which is existing on the site.
Mr. Carvalino, you can't add anything?
Mr. Chair, it would be inappropriate for me to try to read into community planning's report. It's there. We can have staff bring it up. And the original report?
Yeah, we had original report, and the memo that said it still stands said, I think, something about it was to consult with community planning, and they said, as no changes have been made, the previous refusal report stands. So what changes did they ask you to make, sir? Did they ask you to make changes? It was just to consult. Maybe to explain, this is a little unusual with the residential in the back and a welding school and then a shed related to the welding school but not the residence. Was there any consultation? Because it didn't say, you said you didn't make any changes, but what changes did they ask you to make changes? This is black and white. It either is yes and no. It's not a question of making it smaller or, so that's what I don't understand. And community planning isn't available to be cross-examined or
Right.
questioned on
Yes, so
give us
Mr.
a report or why they didn't give us a report. So we have to try to interpret. So did you meet with them?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we did consult with them. We did consult with them, and they just see this, apparently they see this as a residential use, which is obviously not the case. Both the uses are legal uses. The residential use, like, you know, this used to be a residential use. It's been grandfathered in, and the family is currently living there, and the current use is a commercial use based on which they're actually doing new commercial construction at the back. So both the uses seem to be a legal use. So these three areas in question, the canopy and two additions to the shed and the garage, are to us an addition of the commercial use. So we've had that discussion. I have no idea, somehow in all their wisdom, they stood by their initial letter of refusal. So.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, or is someone ready for a motion?
I'll try a motion with hopefully a little bit of explanation, or as far as I understand it, if I may. I mean, this is the old village of Clairville, which was a residential area, but when it was incorporated into Toronto, it was made a industrial area, with the residences becoming legal non-conforming.
Okay.
And as far, from what I can see, is planning is assuming that because this addition is physically attached to the residence, as opposed to a commercial or industrial activity, they're seeing that as an expansion of the residential function. And so I think it's a geographic thing. It's a visual thing. But in terms of the function, I'm going to accept this as a expansion of the legal use, and the legal non-conforming is not being expanded, and therefore I would find this to be minor and move for approval.
Okay, Ms. Ruddock, I see you've had your hand up. Did you want to weigh in with something before we have a motion? Did you have any?
Yeah, I just had a question because, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so because the variance request, the notice of the variance request refers to like a residential use. So I'm unclear as to the characterization of it as not residential when the section of the bylaw that's referring to talks about the addition to the existing residential building are not permitted. So that's the exception. So I'm just a bit confused as to
I think
how this is being categorized.
I think we're all confused, including the planning department and the applicant. And as Mr. Kamarick just tried to and made a very, I think, good point, the non-conforming is the residential, not the commercial. I think that's a good thing because you wouldn't want to see, welding is scary, can be scary stuff being handled in a non-conforming in a residential neighborhood as opposed to residential use in a industrial where there's welding going on. So I think, Mr. Kamarick, if I guess what we have to do in order to support the application is to look at it as if the industrial is the predominant use and it's the shed is related to the industrial use, which I think the applicant has tried to show us that in fact it is. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Just so I can pipe in for a sec. That bylaw that was passed in 2000, Mr. Kamarick is absolutely right. There's been a lot of study up in Clairville, and it involves the compatibility of the residential that was there versus what it is evolving into. But the variance is quite specific to that bylaw, and what we don't have before us is that bylaw. He mentioned legal non-conforming for the residential, but I don't know if that bylaw resulted in everything that was there being legal and conforming. So the application before us is not to expand a legal non-conforming use. It is a variance to the bylaw that was passed in 2007. Sorry, in 2000.
But I think if you look at that, it says the dwelling listed in Schedule B is a permitted provided no expansions. So in 2000, they said, okay, we're making this area industrial. I guess we have to live with the residences that were here, but no more expansions because we want to slowly get rid of them because it's non-conforming now that this is a industrial area where there can be noxious uses, dangerous uses, welding being one of them. So I think if we look at it as the applicant is trying to say, and Mr. Komarik's saying, that shed is related to the industrial use, then it's not an addition, or we're going to make it as a committee an exception to the no additions being made to residential buildings after that bylaw. Does that make any sense? That's the way I look at it. So I would, so
Well,
someone prepared to make a motion, we can have a nice theoretical academic discussion, but we have to come with a decision. So I think we have to, if we
I just want to point out.
I think Ms. Reddick made a very good point too, that if we look at this as an expansion to the residential, then it's not permitted. But if we look at it as an expansion to the ICI use or the industrial use, which I think it is because it's the non-conforming part, it's not like you're adding on a residential addition. If they came here and they said, yeah, we have this residence and we want to add a two-story addition or whatever else, or a new front porch, then we'd say, yeah, we'd point to this, 517-2000, can't do it. You're expanding your residential use. We want to get rid of this residential use. So after 2000, you're allowed to stay, but you're not going to expand it. So if you characterize this shed as the industrial portion, which I think, at least to me, that's what it seems, then I think we could approve this. So I'm not the one making motions, so I'll leave it to one of you learned people to do so.
I just had one other comment. It's Sophia. So if you look at the last two paragraphs of the planning memo, they refer to a previous application on the residential portion, an expansion of that, and then this application, and noting that they didn't contemplate this additional application. So I'm not. I think there's some lack of clarity as to, really what's involved in this application, because the planning is saying that they approved the expansion of a previous residential one, and it didn't contemplate the expansion of this new variance, whether you want to categorize it as residential or commercial.
Okay, so do you want to make a motion?
That's all I want to point out then.
If you want, yeah.
I would move a motion to reject the application.
Okay, so is there a seconder for that motion? Okay, then the motion fails. No one's ready to second that. We just need more time. Okay, going, gone. Do I have a new motion?
If anybody else would like to make a motion, I find the few words which are most important in this, in my mind, is I understand all the complexity of the two uses. Planning definitely says the site is designated as core employment area.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move approval of the variances because it's the core employment area and the activity is employment. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think because we're assuming, maybe Ms. Roddick is not, in approving this, we have to say that shed is related to the industrial use and not to the residential use. So I think that's the way the applicant has presented it. I buy into that. So we have a motion for approval of the application. There's no forestry or anything. No. Seconder for that motion, Mr. Palmer.
I'm going to second it. Just a friendly amendment, just so the applicant doesn't have to come back.
Yeah.
If we make the approval that they can have the additions to the existing residential building for the uses on the property. So they don't have to come back here if they want to add another 10 square feet on their shed.
Mr. Carvalino, what do you think of, just let's run this. So you're suggesting we add wording to say, like,
for the industrial use or whatever the use is there.
Mr. Chair, that would be an extra permission that's not before us.
Okay, I'll withdraw that then. I'll just second the motion then by Mr. Bellissimo.
Okay, thank you, Neil. All in favor? Motion carries 4-1. Opposed? Ms. Reddick, thank you. Okay, thank you, applicant, and thank you, everyone, for...
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I thought we were going to be out of here earlier today, but it's still before 5. So everyone have a great week, great weekend, and be safe.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Yep.